Good morning. Thank you so much for everybody that made the trek out here today, and thank God for some sunny weather and a little reprieve from the rain. Today's January 7th. This is our first Commissioner Committee meeting of the year, 2019. I'm going to call the meeting to order, and we're going to open with prayer and then Pledge of Allegiance, and we'll move on to seeing if there's anything we need to add to the agenda before we hold public forum. So if you'll rise with me for a moment of prayer, and then I'll ask Commissioner Salter to lead us in the pledge. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this opportunity to gather here today, God. I pray that you'll just bring many blessings upon us and our community, God, in 2019, Lord. We pray that you'll give us wisdom and knowledge beyond our years, God, discernment as we make decisions that affect not only our community now, God, but for future generations, Lord. We just thank you so much for the opportunity to live in America and live here in Santa Rosa County, Lord, and we pray your continued blessings, Lord. In Jesus Christ's precious name, amen.
Amen. Please join me in the pledge to our nation's flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And before we open public forum, I just want to ask staff and the other commissioners if there is anything to add to today's agenda. I'll start to my far right with Mr. Furman, Commissioner Peach.
I was out in the lobby checking out the audio visual, making sure it come through good, so we're good to go. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Commissioner Salter.
No changes, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Lynchard. Anybody with staff?
Sir, one addition that was late last week would be the appointment of Mr. Bill Lynn to the Aviation Advisory Committee. We'll put that as the last item on admin, and we'll have the paperwork and backup added for Thursday. So if we just leave that on the regular agenda, but it would be number 10.
Yes, sir.
No additions.
Thank you. All right, thank you so much. Now, glad for the change to be able to offer the opportunity to any members of the public that are here to speak today. We're going to start the meeting with public forum to try to make sure you have a chance, if you'd like to address the board, that you have that opportunity today. If anybody would like to speak during the public forum section, we would just ask that you get with our ladies here at the front and make sure you fill out a speaker's form with your name and address. Seeing none, I'm going to close public forum. Sorry. Oh, yeah, please come forward. I apologize.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Ladies.
Thank you for coming.
Sure. My name is Dara Hardigan. I live at 4601 Soundside Drive in Gulf Breeze, Florida. And I'm here to speak regarding the Land Development Code. I am just hoping that as you look over the Land Development Code and make revisions, that you will keep an eye towards reassuring the public regarding the changes that you make. People should be able to buy a home in a community that they love and not have to worry that that someone will be allowed to come in and make changes to the character of the community, to lower the property values, cause any damage to the existing homeowners' properties, whether that is by way of flooding or other damage. As I looked over the Land Development Code, I see that much of the code is adequate. It just needs to be enforced. And I know that you guys are looking at reinstituting code enforcement. I hope that's something that you will do in combination with the changes that you make. And with enforcement, I also hope that you will consider impact fees and bonds and mitigation and restoration on the part of developers that go in and do things incorrectly. So that after you approve a subdivision, The developers don't just go in and change things like taking a right-of-way stub out and making that a lot, or bringing in red clay where they shouldn't, or operating without permits, or clearing without permits, or operating without proper BMTs or silt fencing that harms the wetlands and the surrounding waterways. Additionally, if a subdivision cannot be engineered so that the stormwater runoff diverts into the retention ponds where it's supposed to, then probably that subdivision shouldn't be permitted. And likewise, if there is not manpower or funding to police the developments and enforce the codes, then possibly the subdivisions should not be permitted. The public usually doesn't know that something has been done wrong until after the fact, and the developers are gone, and then they're faced with some damage from the neighboring new subdivisions. But to get specifically to the Land Development Code, under Article 7, the conservation easements need to be increased and preserved. We have conservation easements on paper that are not being preserved, and they're being encroached on once the developers get on site. Under 7.0103, the perimeter landscaping adjacent to public rights-of-way needs to be increased from 10 feet to 25 feet where possible. Under 7.0105, landscape buffers, canopy trees need to be left, and the buffers need to be left natural if possible. Under the tree protection sections, native trees 24 inches and larger, including live oaks and whatever, need to be protected. And that means that it would take a permit and mitigation to remove those trees, like in Leon County. And you can also, Leon County has a GRACE program, Green Space Reservation Area and Credit Exchange. We could adopt something like that, and that would make it more palatable for developers. But there needs to be tree protections in addition to the heritage trees and champion trees, which are supposed to be protected. Under 7.0102, heritage trees the protections need to be changed from 60 inches in diameter to 36 inches. Again, that's like Leon County. Right now, a heritage tree has to be 15 feet in circumference. That's like a bedroom of a house for it to qualify as a heritage tree and to be protected, and even they get bulldozed sometimes. So you've got tree protection, which requires a permit to remove and mitigation, and then you have changes to the heritage trees. And in the Gulf Coastal Lowlands area, oaks with a 6-inch caliper need to be protected, and most importantly of all, under 7.0106, subdivision developers are exempt from any of these tree protections except for that, heritage tree, the one that's 15 feet in circumference. That's the only thing that they have to look out for, and that's why they're able to go in and bulldoze everything. It's like, since we don't have any trees that are 15 feet in circumference, it's like having no restrictions on them whatsoever. But getting back to the Gulf Coastal Lowlands area, I know this is big, but I want you to consider it as you look over the Land Development Code. Portions of the Gulf Coastal Lowlands needs to be designated as protected areas and not subject to mass development. The land is not adaptive to this kind of development. It doesn't have the natural features Article 6 already has these provisions. There's some in Baghdad. Under 6.05.21A, there are conservation overlay districts. We need an overlay district like that for the Gulf Coastal Lowlands before they are all completely gone, and we are headed there right now. The first one I would suggest is on Soundside Drive from Nantahala East to the zoo, and in case the zoo ever goes under, including the zoo. And that's basically all that I have for your consideration as you undertake the revisions to the Land Development Code. And I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Ms. Hardigan, for coming, and I would just encourage you, I don't know if you've ever had the opportunity to meet our Planning and Zoning Director, Sean Ward, but if not, he's in the back of the room, and I'm sure he'd be glad to give you his contact information. And if you had the opportunity to, just share with him those suggestions, as well as I know, obviously, one of the items today is for us to embark on updating that Land Development Code, and that way we can make sure we had them documented for consideration. And I do appreciate you taking the time to have such a thoughtful process laid out.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
Have a good week.
Do we have anybody else? Yes, ma'am, please come forward. And if you will, again, just state your name and address for the record.
I'm Elizabeth Major, and I'm living at 1900 Reserve Boulevard.
You can pull that down a little bit if it's more comfortable. There you go. Thank you, Ms.
I'm
Major.
living at 1900 Reserve Boulevard, 7101 Gulf Breeze. Since I had to have 3 replacement surgeries this year, I had to move from the family home on East Bay to this apartment building, which is new. It's maybe less than 2 years old. Since I have lived there, I have not seen a resident bird, a bee, a butterfly, a squirrel, a rabbit, nothing, because of your building codes. I have a wonderful screen porch. During my convalescence, I couldn't sit out there and watch any wildlife whatsoever because none is there. Now, I called a girl who is a master naturalist, who is a master gardener, who is secretary of the Audubon Society, and who is on your Restore Committee, and she came up with this, which I have copied and given to all of you, and I have a copy for you. If you look on page 4, they list communities in the state that have made ordinance covering natural plants. And if you don't have natural plants, you don't have wildlife, because that's the only thing that creates a food supply for them. So there's no food there. And you have no ordinances about native plants that work, from my experience. And so please seriously consider not just heritage trees, but native plants in general. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Major, for coming, and we appreciate the opportunity for the handout we can look over, and this will be something as well I'll make sure that our Planning and Zoning Director has. Yes, ma'am, if you would, just state your name and address for the record. Thank you for coming.
Good morning. My name is Justine Tischgraber, and I live at 6105 Sherry Drive in Milton, Florida. And this is just a quick comment on ECUA. Obviously, they pick up our trash, but I'm a little unhappy because our services are on Tuesday, and our second garbage pickup is on Friday. And I appreciate that they gave their employees off on the holidays. That's appropriate. But for me to be charged for those 2 days of pickup when no pickup occurred does not make me happy. I called to see when the pickup would be, and they picked up the recycle the next day, which was Wednesdays, but there was no trash pickup until Friday. And the woman said, oh, by the way, there will be no credit given for that. And I just don't see that as A, good business, or B, appropriate to the consumers that are sort of basically having to use ECUA and have no other option. So that's my comment.
No, Ms. Disgraber, I appreciate you sharing that. I would assume, I have no way of knowing, but I would assume that the other commissioners, if they heard half of the calls and emails I did generated over the holidays about garbage pickup was the number one issue that commissioners were contacted about, or at least this commissioner was, and specifically ECUA. We've talked with our staff, and there's definitely some things we want to try to hammer out, especially on the communication side. And I could tell you this was one of the times where I even had to explain to my wife why, us being in the single waste hauler business was generating so many phone calls. But I can assure you I've talked with staff, even some over the weekend, and this is something we're going to look at how we can continue to improve.
And actually, you triggered a memory, which is on 2 other occasions toward the end of the year, I actually called the office to see when they would be picking up, and the information that was given to me was totally incorrect. I don't know if that was just to appease me, or that she did not know, or whatever.
Well, I can share with you, I've heard similar concern that we've got to work on their communication, and that would be not only with us, but with the public, and there's definitely some room for improvement. So I appreciate you making the time to come down here and talk with us about it today.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Do we have anybody else that would like to speak during public forum? Jerry's going to make his way up here.
You mean there's an open mic in the building? Oh, boy.
Yeah, but we got you on timer, though, so.
Ladies and gentlemen of distinguished Santa Rosa County, I am Jersey Jerry Foster, Wild and Crazy Guy, reside at 7860 Lola Circle in beautiful Navarre, Florida. And I come before you this morning to say thank you. Thank you very much for who you are and what you do, trying to make our county a much better place. And I am blessed with some of the things that I've been able to accomplish. As I shared with Don on Friday, I start my 80th ride on this third rock around the sun. And I'm still in his field doing work. And one of the things that we did over the holidays is we had a terrific event in Navarre, on Navarre Beach, to help the weekend food program. Our Pirates on the Panhandle, in case you didn't see, were recognized in the Pensacola News Journal above the mask that said, and I quote, "Ahoy mates, hundreds attend second annual Navarre Beach Pirate Plunge." And when you go inside, we were very fortunate to have pretty much the whole third page. Again, I'm not sure if anyone saw this. And then we had on Santa Rosa News on Friday, they printed a nice little article, and our brother Dave Peach, in trunks on the beach, doing his thing. And what was interesting is we had a tent put up on the beach, and where the Navarre Chamber does their Thursday night in the park now, tuned by the dunes. And we had some other dignitaries from the county. Stan Coley Nichols and his wife Joyce came down and had a nice dinner New Year's Eve. Emily's husband was part of the Bay Bridge band that played. We sold the dinner out, 258 according to the fire code, at the Navarre Conference Center. And between that event and our Pirate Plunge, I think we're going to raise well over $10,000 for the weekend food program, of which I'm honored and happy to help that 501c3 organization succeed. And I came before you this morning actually to ask for the opportunity to run the third annual next year, and I just was in with Sabrina and filled out the form. So unfortunately, gentlemen and ladies on the end, you're going to have to see me in 2 weeks, good Lord willing, to come back and get that approved. But according to people that are more involved and understand crowds, the Pensacola News Journal gentleman said that there had to be at least 1,100 to 1,200 people on the beach, and he quoted in the paper that over 450 took the plunge. Just a fun day. The good Lord blessed us with 70-plus degree weather, and it was just a tremendous event. So I just thank you for allowing us to do the things we do in the south end of the county.
Jerry, thank you so much for what you do. I know over the past couple of years, I've had the opportunity to see just how involved you are, and I'm smiling so big because I can't help but note, after seeing the picture, albeit I think it was only about it was the temperature was twice what it was last year when you talked Rob Williamson and going. But I was going to say it takes a special kind of commissioner to be in District 4 because Jerry is going to get you to jump in that cold water.
Well, the water was 64, 65, so the water was like bath water.
So he got off easy this year.
Yeah, he did. He did.
Mr. Chairman, my priest called me out too, so there was a little pressure from above.
Well, thank you for what you do, and I know that program and those children and families appreciate it.
And I feel blessed. Our Pirates, I'm the co-founder of the organization, which is a 501c3, and come May, we'll be 10 years old, chartered May 22nd in '09. And during that 9 years, a few months, we have raised and donated back into the community over $84,000. It was my goal, and again, all the numbers are not in, but it was my goal to see if we could have raised $100,000 by our 10th anniversary. And it's real money making a real difference to a lot of different organizations. Our webpage, piratesonthepanhandle.com, has a list of over 30 organizations that we've donated to. And we'll continue to strive to do good things in the community to help those less fortunate than us.
Thank you, Jerry.
So thank you. God bless you all. Have a healthy and prosperous new year.
Mr. Chairman, Jerry, thank you for what you do. You and your organization, one of the reasons Santa Rosa County is such a great place to live, work, and play. At this time, I want to go ahead and nominate Commissioner Peach to represent the board for the plunge next year.
There you go. All right.
We'll close the nominations.
Well, actually, I asked you all, but some folks said they were out of, sorry, just this entity. But next year, be aware, because if I'm here, you may be there.
Yeah, he'll put the pressure on you too. I have sort of a scapegoat. I've got an uncle with a birthday that the family gets together every year. This year, we glory be to God, we were getting ready to get my wife's granny out of the hospital. She had a surgery, but she is well, and that is a blessing. But so we'll continue to look for Commissioner Peach's photos on the following week every year for sure, and maybe.
Oh, he's going to be involved. We're going to get him active. He's a good man, and we're blessed to have him. So
thank you, Jerry.
Thank you, gentlemen, ladies.
Do we have anybody else? We're still in the public forum section. Anybody else that would like to come address the board on an issue not on today's agenda? Sir, would you by chance happen to be here for public forum today? All right. We're going to go ahead and close public forum then. And we will move forward to today's Economic Development Committee, and I don't believe Commissioner Salter has anything under that committee.
Nothing today, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right, next we'll move to the Admin Committee. Item number 1 is a NERDA Artificial Reef Deployment Contract. It's a time extension, and this is just for a contract modification with Walter Marine for an additional 90 days for deployment of the artificial reefs. If there's nothing to add, I would just, Dan?
Nothing to add, sir, just a time extension to get the work done.
I would just move that to Thursday's consent agenda. Also, I had slipped my mind in December. I would have mentioned with you fellows when we did the schedule, but I'll just say it now so I don't forget at the end of the meeting. I'm going to ask Commissioner Salter to take over Thursday for me. I'll be in Gainesville at that Advanced County Commissioner course that's Thursday and Friday, so I won't be here on Thursday. All right, item number 2 is Public Assistance Funding Agreement for Tropical Storm Nate. This is just approval of a grant agreement with Florida Division of Emergency Management. This is necessary for reimbursement of expenditures incurred in preparation for Tropical Storm Nate in 2017. If there's nothing further to add on that, I would move that to Thursday's consent agenda. Item number 3 is a derelict vessel removal grant opportunity. This is for a grant application to remove a derelict vessel through the 2019 Florida Wildlife Commission derelict vessel grant opportunity. If there's nothing to add on this, I would move it to Thursday's consent agenda. Item number 4 is event request. We've got Navarre Beach Area Chamber of Commerce's request to utilize Navarre Park for the 25th annual Christmas and use county right-of-way for the Jingle Run 5K and Christmas parade scheduled for December 7th, 2019. Our county administrator has already stated he knows they're going to have to coordinate with staff about construction underway in the park and working around that. But other than that, if there's nothing to add, I would recommend moving that to Thursday's consent agenda. Move to item number 5. I'll let Dan handle it in case he wants to go more in depth on it, but this is to deal with the updates on the jail geothermal HVAC replacement project.
Yes, sir. Well, if we're going to go in depth, I've got Marty and Glenn here to answer the in-depth questions, but this is a project that the board approved last year. We hired Image Engineering Group out of Texas after a procurement process to do the design. They are at a 60% design level and have updated the opinion of probable cost based upon primarily the need to add a mechanical building at the sheriff's site. They thought they could fit all the equipment within the current footprint, but they need to add a mechanical building. So the costs have increased because of that, as well as just because of increase in construction costs. There's an additional $800,000 needed. The board appropriated $2.5 million for this project. The current total is at $3.3 million. Because of that significant price increase, we asked the consultant to go back and do some further analysis of the return on investment and the cost-benefit analysis for this. The jail geothermal system, or a geothermal system, is designed for about a 40-year life expectancy, and we expect the return to be about 13 years based upon a 25% cost savings annually on the utilities at the jail. That's a very conservative cost estimate. We have, in discussions, heard numbers as high as 35%. So I expect that would be a sooner return, as well as we haven't factored in any Gulf Power incentives into that return on investment. So to just replace it with high-efficiency rooftop units and to replace a boiler that needs to be replaced, you're looking at close to $2 million, $1.7 million. And the life expectancy on those systems are about 20 to 25 years, so we would be spending that again. So the recommendation of staff, the recommendation of the team, the project manager and the team, is to continue with the geothermal project and to appropriate the additional funds from unassigned fund balance in the general fund. If you have any specific questions, Glenn's here to answer. He's working with the consultant directly.
Commissioner Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Several questions. I don't know who wants to field them. The costs that were being quoted, we've talked several times about the need for additional jail space. So is this equipment going to be adequate for the addition? I'd like to know what the expected maintenance cost would be, because if we're not factoring the maintenance cost, then certainly that would escalate as the equipment gets older. What that could be expected to add to the payback, or the length of time for payback, and what is the warranty on the initial equipment?
Commissioner Cole, the system, as I understand, is kind of designed kind of modular. It's not going to handle by itself an increase in square footage of the jail, an addition or expansion, but they will be able to add to the system, add components, and utilize control systems and some of the pumps and piping, but they will have to add, other equipment as an addition takes place.
But the underground portion of it is going to be adequate to handle
My understanding is they would stick with the current underground geothermal grid system if there was an expansion, and probably just add a cooling tower and use both the cooling tower and the geothermal system.
Because if I'm recalling correctly, I think the discussion of the board at that time was to make sure we're adequate for that increase. Let's not back up and, I can understand that, some components to handle the building itself, but I don't want to be, boring and putting more equipment underground for the geothermal part of it.
Yes, sir. According to the consultant, like I say, they would plan to handle it with a air cooling tower rather than the additional geothermal grid system, and still, save from using the underground system as well.
Okay, I might want to talk to you some more about that, because we know we're going to expand the jail. I'd rather everything be in the ground now that we need to put down, so we're not adding, anything unnecessary at this time, fine, but anything that could be put in the ground now, I'd rather do. And then, did they give you any kind of expected maintenance cost? And is that factored into what we're looking at?
No, sir, not at this time. They were preliminary numbers. We are at the 60% milestone. When we asked for this comparison, we didn't give them a lot of time to put together a real extensive, detailed maintenance cost type.
Let's get some of that too, because, this isn't the first piece of equipment out there, so they should have records on maintenance cost on comparable piece of equipment, and then what the warranty is on the, from the time we put this thing online to how many years warranty do we get on equipment, on labor, stuff like that. That'd be interesting to know.
Yes, sir. I would think that the typical units, these are water-cooled rather than air-cooled units, very similar to, conventional systems. So you would have the manufacturer's warranty. I would imagine that was very similar. As far as the warranty from the contractor installing it, I would imagine would be like, 1 year. But I'll see what I can find out.
1 year seems kind of slack on
Yeah.
that expensive a unit. I'd like to see,
Right.
Maybe a 5-year stand behind.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Any further questions by the board? Commissioner Peach.
Yeah, when you're looking at the system too, just the maintenance, as Commissioner Cole brought up, because with water systems, you tend to get into water treatment, and, that could add up during the year. So I'm interested in the long-term maintenance of these facilities and what, if they could project the cost for, water treatment and things like that, because that all comes with water as opposed to air.
Yes, sir. I mean, I can ask them, to prepare like an annual maintenance type and
That'd be great.
estimate and include, I would imagine that would be some of the more pricey stuff right there,
Yep.
the water treatment, whatnot.
Cool. Thank you.
Well, having said that, I mean, this would be, I don't know, I'll have them take a look
Have
at
them
it.
take a look, yeah. I wouldn't mind taking
All
a
right, all right, thanks. Any other questions?
No. Dan, with that, I would just ask that if you could get staff to circle back around with the commissioners and just provide us all with the updated information. I know, before that time comes, we'll make sure that everybody's satisfied with that. But if I don't hear any other discussion, I would just move staff's recommendation here, which is really, the recommendation was about a funding source, and I recommended that additional cost come from the unassigned general fund balance. I would just move that to Thursday's consent agenda. Item number 6 is sale of county property. This is a discussion of offering the Whittle Building, which is at 6828 there on Highway 90 or Carolyn Street, for sale. I know I've had the opportunity to talk with staff. Dan, I'll let you just give a quick introduction for those in the audience on this as well, and then hopefully we've had a chance to I think I really only maybe hit on one big question about the cost of using the clerk's service, but.
I'll defer the questions about the actual disposal to Roy. He's taking a look, he's got a couple contracts, but this is a property that we were using to store some of the supervisor of election materials that she's required to maintain by federal election law. We've relocated all of those materials to another site. We've made use of other materials, racks and things that were in the Whittle Building. Building maintenance says, we have no other purpose for the Whittle Building. This was one that we discussed a while ago as a property once we relocated those materials, that we would be ready to dispose of it. it's up to the board as to what matter, or what path we would like to take to dispose of it, or if we would just like to hold on to it for some potential other use, so.
Right. Statutorily, the board is required to declare that the property is surplus if we want to dispose of it, any real property, and we are required to advertise that for sale. We have contemplated and are using, in regard to some other pieces of property, mostly vacant lots or lots that have a dilapidated structure on it, the Bidzilla Group, which is the mechanism we use for disposing of our personal property. That's an online auction. We have not used them, but are in the process of using them to dispose of those other items of personal property, real property. Their cost, or the cost to us, is covered by buyer's premium that they add to the property. In other words, we don't pay a commission or a portion of the money of the recovery to them. They add their fee on top, which may obviously affect the price and the saleability of the property, but it's not out of pocket for the commissioners. Now, you can either, if you want to dispose of the building, you have to declare it surplus. You can direct staff whether you want us to go with that Bidzilla group, or if we want to advertise it here locally and take bids in-house. That would be the determination for the board to make.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Cole.
Question through the chair to Roy. Are we required to do it as an auction, or can we have the property appraised and put a for sale sign on it and for fair market value? I've seen in the past county property sales pretty cheap, and I'm kind of deterred from wanting to, put it out to bid, get minimal bids. I know we can put a reserve on it, but is that an option? I guess I didn't see that.
Once the board determines that it's surplus property, the mechanism for sale, as long as we do open it to the public, sure, with the advertising requirement, which is statutorily, we can advertise it, and we can put a for sale sign on it and handle it in-house. We do have to open it to the public. That's the only requirement, but we don't have to do it through the online auction process or any other specific process.
So we got the option of auction or fair market value, and here's our price.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Commissioner Salter.
Mr. Chairman, this building, the board's been trying to sell it for many years. So at this time, I would make a motion to declare it surplus property and open it up to the public for bids for Thursday's consent agenda.
Commissioner Cole.
Commissioner Salter got me a little, I don't know that we've ever tried to sell this property before, Commissioner. You said we've tried to sell it for many years. And
We wanted to.
well, yeah, I agree with that part of it, but I don't know it's ever got this far. Again, my concern is just, I'm okay with the bid process as long as we put a reserve on it. I just don't want to be giving away public property at a minimal cost. I think we ought to at least try to capture a certain amount on all these properties. It should be that's just my thoughts.
We can advertise to the public and accept bids, and then it's up to the board if we want to accept the highest bid or to reject all bids.
Okay, all right, I'm good with that. Thank you.
That's fine, and we could order a full appraisal on the property. I don't know if we want to go to the expense to do that. We can do a realtor's estimate would probably be sufficient for this.
Broker price opinion. I think we could have time to do that after we saw what the bids were, or in between now and then. Commissioner Salter, do you want to make that without objection?
Make it without objection to move to Thursday consent agenda.
Hearing no objection, that item is moved. And Item number 7 is surplus property. This is for the declaration of surplus property items as declared by the Clerk of Court's office. The list is in the backup. This is standard equipment. I would recommend that we move this to Thursday's consent agenda. Item number 8 is program management recommendation. This is the discussion of approval to award the Judicial Center Complex Program Management Services contract to Mott McDonald. Dan, if you want to speak on this, that's fine. If not, I believe all the commissioners have had the opportunity to look over this in the backup. So I would make the motion to recommend this for Thursday's consent agenda. It's moved. Item number 9 is the amendment of county procurement ordinance. Dan, you want to touch that one?
Yes, sir. Mark and Jane and James in procurement have undertaken a thorough review of our, not just our procurement ordinance, but establishing a procurement manual that will detail the policies under which we would execute procurement under that ordinance. Part of this, before we can put in place a procurement manual, we want to update and revise the procurement ordinance. So this is permission to advertise, we're seeking the board's permission to advertise a change to that procurement ordinance. We would have that on the agenda, the first set of meetings in February, along with the procurement policy manual presented at the same time.
Thank you, Dan, and I appreciate for the folks that are here in the audience the information. This is really just your continued effort and staff's continued effort to try to make sure everything is out there for the public to get the best value when it comes to the county. And so I know I get contacted by a lot of businesses, and I'm sure other commissioners do too, that say, you know, hey, how do we work with the county? And I know Shannon's office has really been out front on trying to help folks with doing business with the county. So I will move that to Thursday's consent agenda without objection. And item number 10, if you'll hit, was the appointment, I believe you said, that was the add-on.
Yes, sir. We have a vacancy on the Aviation Advisory Board. Mr. Bill Lynn has volunteered his services, and we received that late last week. We'll get that added to the agenda, just seeking the board's approval to appoint him as a member of the Aviation Advisory Board.
All right, hearing the comment, just move that to Thursday's regular agenda, and that way they have the opportunity to have backup. All right, next we are going to shift over to Roger for the engineer's report.
Good morning. Our first item is a discussion of a blanket easement with Gulf Power, which will allow access to areas within the central landfill. As the board knows, Phase 5 expansion is underway. That infrastructure is going to require modifications to the electrical infrastructure, new lift station, and this just blanket easement to facilitate those new electrical infrastructure.
Move that to Thursday's consent agenda.
Item number 2 is a discussion of the purchase of one four-wheel drive half-ton single cab Ford F-150 from Bozard Ford Company for the Environmental Department. You have in your backup the bid tabs. They were the only bidder. The one thing I would add is their bid is below the one of the state bid contracts, but they're the only bid, and we're recommending approval.
Move that to Thursday's consent agenda.
Item number 3 is also an environmental department purchase of a 4x4 SUV. It too only received one bid from Bozard Ford Company, and we'll recommend approval of it as well on the consent agenda.
Move that to Thursday's consent agenda.
Item number 4 is a discussion of the contract work modification to site utility for the Venetian Way and Coronado Drive drainage improvements HMGP project. That's a flood mitigation project in the additive amount of $5,487.75. This is a change condition issue that resorted in having conflicts with the electrical components, and we are recommending approval on the consent agenda for that contract mod.
We'll move that to Thursday's consent agenda.
And item number 5 is a preliminary plat for Bradley Estates. Bradley Estates is a 84-lot subdivision located in District 3.
Move that to Thursday's consent agenda.
And item number 6 is the Whitey Aviation Consultant Contract. Staff has been in negotiations with Moffitt Nichols and have negotiated a fee of $950,524.40 and are recommending a contract be developed, professional services contract in that amount.
Move that to Thursday's consent agenda.
Item number 7, we're recommending approval of the final plat for the second addition to Woodlands Phase 1. This is a 77-lot public subdivision located in District 1.
Move that to Thursday's consent agenda.
Item number 8 is a discussion of the engineering scope and fee with Genesis for the Spencerfield Traffic Improvement Project in the amount of $187,500. Staff has been in negotiations with them, and we are recommending to the board that the county staff continue those discussions by removing Task 3 and Task 5 from their contract and perform those services in-house and award the balance of $187,500 to Genesis.
I'll just ask Mark or Dan that no further evolution of that conversation from Thursday of last week when we spoke.
No, sir, I think we've been working with the engineering staff to take those two tasks in-house. That'll reduce the cost by about $17,000, $16,600 to be exact. But we do think we've got the best price we can get for the services that we need for the other intersections.
I do appreciate y'all taking the initial bid that was brought in and going back to them with that and getting the fee down, you know, a portion for what we could. So thank you for that. We'll move that to Thursday's consent agenda.
Item number 9 is a discussion of a change order number 1 to deduct $144,724.76 from the Central Landfill Phase 5 Expansion Project contract with Atlantis Commercial Group. As we went through the process and bid this project, the as-built survey was performed approximately 4 to 6 months prior to their actually conducting their pre-construction survey. The county had need for cut material. We continue cutting that material. And what this represents is additional off-site fill that they had to bring back, but also the credit for that cut material that they didn't have to cut, resulting in a deduct. And so we're recommending a deduction in the amount of $144,724.76.
Commissioner Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Always good to hear about some money coming back our direction. You think we can use those dollars to build that maintenance building I want out there?
Not this year, sir.
Why not? $144,000, you just...
We've got other capital projects already budgeted. We are working on our capital improvement project. We've committed to the board that we're going to do that, but I just don't see how we can use these dollars when we've got another $1 million following, which is the commercial scale house renovation or relocation, so that we can accelerate and reduce our queue time. So we just don't see it this year, but we are working towards that end, Commissioner.
All right, I'm going to bring it up every chance I get. Thank you.
We'll try to have an answer every time too, sir.
I will. He has become the champion of that building, so I know he'll get it done. We'll get it done. Thank you so much, Roger. We'll move that to Thursday's consent agenda, and I believe that precludes your report. Thank you, Roger.
Yes, sir.
Next, we'll go to Commissioner Cole for Public Services Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We got 2 items on public service today. First one is Florida Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicle and the Santa Rosa County Animal Services mutual agreement. This is a discussion of a memorandum of understanding between the Florida Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles and the Santa Rosa County Animal Services for access and use of driver and vehicle information database. Any comments or questions on that item? Pretty much boilerplate, just a renewal. I'll move that to consent agenda on Thursday without objection.
So moved.
Item 2 is Land Development Code Review Process Discussion, and I've seen Sean head in this direction, so Sean, I'm going to turn that over to you.
Good
Good morning, Commissioners. So over the last few months, there's been certainly some discussion and concern regarding the Land Development Code, whether it be from environmental concerns and factors, tree mitigation, development review, and that process as well. So the Land Development Code, as it was adopted back in the late 80s, early 90s, we've continued to amend it and change it over time as seen fit. So certainly at this time, we think it's a great opportunity for us to go through the Land Development Code, take a look. Staff over the past few years has been developing a list of changes that we want to see as well. So we'll certainly reach out to the commissioners, as well as our individuals such as Ms. Harding that was here earlier this morning that had some information. We're going to work with the chamber as well as the Home Builders Association, other county departments, engineering, and our BI staff, and come back with a list of changes that we would like to see. Certainly, if there needs to be a compromise in that aspect, we'll certainly sit at the table and come up with a compromise in between. If there's something that's particularly a sticky situation, at that point we'll take a look at other counties, municipalities, see what they have, and come back with proposed changes. At that point, it will then proceed to the zoning board for discussion. And then we can also, at that point, bring it back to you as well. And so we certainly think that this is something that's been in the works for a long time. We look forward to working on it and making these changes.
Sean, do you foresee perhaps having to have a separate meeting or a public forum type meeting that stands alone from a regular commission meeting for back and forth discussion of this? These changes, instituting the changes and stuff?
Yes, sir, I do foresee that. I know that the Santa Rosa Chamber of Commerce has already met with a group of developers, contractors, engineers, business entities as well. They started this about a month or so ago. So they are working together. They have come together as a collaborative group. So that will scratch off a few of these. But when it comes to the general public, I'll work with our computer department and PIO to set up either a website, set up some additional charrettes that we can have individuals come and work out some of these issues that may arise.
Great, good idea. Any questions from members of the board? Input from members of the board?
Sean, go ahead. Sean, I appreciate it. I know we've had several discussions on this, and thank you. And I appreciate you having the timeline out, which shows that I know we don't want to be too hasty in making decisions that, or have a generational impact, and at least we can get it all done this calendar year, basically almost before the conclusion of this fiscal year is what it looks like. My only question I thought of, and especially after the lady, I believe it was Ms. Hardigan, had come and taught this morning, I know the board seemed unanimous on there was a couple things that obviously we want to look at, but one of them being the tree ordinance, or not so much tree ordinance, but how it's addressed in there. Is since we know the board feels strongly on that, and I mean, in 1 year, a lot of things can change landscape-wise. Is that something that we could extract from this, expedite, but yet they could still review, and we could go back and address it at the end of the year, but in lieu of not having to tell folks, hey, it's going to be the end of the year before we address something that we've already said we know we want to look at?
Yes, sir. That's something that the county administrator and I have discussed, as well as I've already explained that to the Santa Rosa Chamber of Commerce as well, so their group can go ahead and start taking a look. We know one thing very specific is the tree protection ordinance and trying to move that forward as quickly as possible. What we're trying to avoid is over the past year, there's been a lot of hey, we need to change this, we need to change that, with citizens coming to staff recommending these changes. So what we're going to try to do is capture all that at one time.
Well, I appreciate that, and thank you so much. I know the Home Builders Association, as well as the chambers and some of these engineer groups are definitely excited to be able to have input, and thank you for that. I don't have any further comment.
Anybody else? All right, good. Well, we're on the right track. We need to just move this forward to the consent agenda, or just, all right, we'll just move that item number 2 then to the consent agenda on Thursday.
So moved.
All right, Mr. Chairman, that concludes Public Service Committee.
Thank you. And next, we'll have the Public Works Committee with Commissioner Lynchard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item number 1 is discussion of approval of a request for a no parking during school events sign to be placed on Pleasant Point Circle across from Navarre High School. Public Works Director reviewed this and has no objections to this request. Mr. Furman, I understand there's this is similar to a request that was approved on a neighboring street a couple of years ago.
Yes, sir, Commissioner. On Ashwood Way, immediately to the west of this road, also across from the high school, they had problems during school events, during the day and at night, disrupting their ability to use their streets, and this board approved the no parking during school events. Since that time, we've heard no other complaints from that roadway.
All right. Thought it sounded like Roger had a taser over there. Any comments from the public on this? If not, Commissioner Peach, this is in your district. Any comments?
No, I looked at this and I discussed it with Mr. Furman, so I'd like to see this move forward.
All right, thank you. I'll move this to the consent agenda without objection.
So moved.
Item 2 is the installation of a crosswalk in Munson Highway. Discussion of approval of a request from the City of Milton for the installation of a pedestrian crosswalk on Munson Highway at Carpenter's Park. Likewise, Public Works had no objection to this request, and long-term costs would be negligible for restriping. Any questions or comments on this?
Commissioner Cole.
Thank you. Not on this, but it does pertain to Munson Highway, Mr. Furman. So we can get it out there to the public. What's our intent on temporary striping on Munson Highway and once the projected resurfacing time for Munson Highway?
The temporary striping should occur in the next 2 weeks. I mean, with all the rain that we've had, it's just been unsuitable conditions for putting down that amount of money for paint that wouldn't stick to a wet highway. On the resurfacing, don't have an exact time frame. We have it as a SCOP project, and if we should know in the spring when that funding might become available, and if it becomes available this coming spring, then we'll certainly proceed. If not, I would recommend coming back to the board to seek an additional funding source, such as our primary road funding, because I don't think we can wait another year before we resurface from Highway 87 up to Whiting Field.
Thank you, Mr. Furman, and thank you, Chairman. I just been getting a lot of phone calls on that. So.
Thank you, Commissioner. And this is going to be conducted by the City of Milton in conjunction with their improvements to Carpenter's Park. Mr. Jorgensen, we've all seen the plans that you have for Carpenter's Park out there. They look great, so I'm sure this will be a well-used crosswalk. So best of luck with the project. I'll move this to Thursday's consent agenda without objection.
So moved.
Item 3 is discussion of approval of request from Whitworth Builders for the paving of approximately 200 feet of Redfield Street at a cost of $4,605. Public Works recommends approval of this request. This is similar to an MSBU. The Road and Bridge Department is going to supply the labor and equipment. The cost for the materials will be covered by Whitworth Builders. Any questions or comments, input on this? If not, I will move this to Thursday's consent agenda without objection.
So moved.
And item number 4 is discussion of seeking competitive bids for the installation of solar lighting at the following boat ramps: Oriole Beach, Woodlawn Beach, East River, Marquee Basin, Archie Glover, and Garcon Point at an approximate cost of $30,000 with funding from the boater registration fee account. This came through the Marine Advisory Committee, and they recommended installation of these solar lights, and it will be paid for out of the boater registration funds. Any questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Cole.
Thank you. Could we add the boat ramp at the south end of 87 on, I believe it's on the Eglin property, but it goes in the Yellow River. It's an old boat ramp that's been disturbed because of the construction of the new bridge. And Mr. Furman and I have been following that and have been assured that there'll still be access there, but the contract didn't require them to do any improvements or anything to the boat ramp. There is a nice road down to it now, paved road, but I don't know if we could maybe...
The one at the foot of the Yellow River Bridge?
Correct. Real
Are
popular.
there any improvements out there at all?
I didn't think they were reopened.
It's, from what Stephen and I found out, it's supposed to be reopened after everything's done, but there was no funding for, in that contract with the bridge people to straighten things back up again. But I did notice a real nice asphalt road down to it that was never there before, so.
Why don't we, let's move forward with this project and then ask staff to investigate.
Get back into
that particular boat ramp. I've used it before. It's a good place to put in if you're going
Yeah,
duck hunting.
and it's certainly no intention to enlarge it for bigger boats or anything,
Right.
just little P-rows and stuff, so.
Yeah.
We
So
can follow
we'll get staff to assess the viability of that boat ramp and if there's any lighting or other improvements we could make out there.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Thank you. So I'll move, any other questions or comments on this? If not, I'll move this to Thursday's consent agenda without objection.
So moved.
And Mr. Chairman, that concludes Public Works Committee.
Thank you, and I see some members from our Marine Advisory Committee out in the audience today, and we appreciate the work that you put in to help bring these recommendations or vet these recommendations to the board. Next, we'll move to the Budget and Financial Management Committee. Commissioner Peach.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Items 1 through 9 are previous approved board actions that just amend those. So I would move to have items 1 through 9 move to Thursday's consent agenda.
So moved.
Item number 10 is a new item. It is Budget Amendment 2019-087. Discussion of Budget Amendment 2019-087, the amount of $16,000 to fund 4 retractable basketball goals to be placed at the Milton Community Center from the District 3 rec funds. I would move that to consent agenda. Any comment?
Commissioner Salter, did you want to say anything?
I was just going to say I'll support this.
Okay.
So moved.
Move it. And then, Mr. Chairman, items 11 through 18 are again amendments to previous board actions that I've reviewed. I'd move all those to Thursday's consent agenda.
So
No
moved.
objection. Item number 19, the check register. I did look at all 101 pages. Thank you, Jane. So we will move that to you for approval.
So moved to the consent
It's a
agenda.
little bigger than my check register, but
I will say, if he keeps those quick committee reports, he might slide Commissioner Lynchard's position as Molly's area commissioner. We're getting us out of here. Thank you, Commissioner Peach. That concludes today's agenda. Thank you so much for everyone that took the opportunity to come out and speak with us today, and the meeting's adjourned.